So I'm sure I'm gonna ruffle a few feathers with that title, but honestly, I feel like given another season, I might already say I prefer this one over DANMACHI. Now, this author, whatever side you fall on, whether you think DANMACHI's better or you think DANMACHI's absolute trash, can't even compare, I think the author is mad talented. I mean, they took a story that's called Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? And the latest season that came out, I know there's a new season coming out this new season of anime, but yeah, like that was one of the craziest things I've seen in recent memory. And this current arc we're in with Wistoria definitely is giving me similar vibes of what Belle and the gang went through there. But there's something about how they've handled this story that just is so compelling. I'm more interested in Will's journey as it stands by episode 9 than I was with Belle's story by episode 9 of season 1 of DANMACHI. And it just feels like an author, you rarely see this, because usually when an author has like a big series, like if Oda wanted to make something after One Piece, I know, you get my point. If Isayama makes something after Attack on Titan, if Kishimoto makes something after, you get my drift. There's always a majority of the opinion that is not as good as their first big work. But I don't really get the impression that the DANMACHI author is going to suffer this. Because the idea of having something as big as DANMACHI, which DANMACHI is a ridiculously popular series, is insane. But the idea that they have done such a good job at matching a lot of what I like about DANMACHI, but doing something completely different all at the same time, has me saying, no matter which side you fall on, they've done what very few authors can and made something equally as enjoyable as what is usually considered their magnum opus, their first big break, but Jesus, is this show incredible. Now, I do have full live reactions over on Patreon. If you want to see my full thought to any of these episodes, you know it's going to be over there exclusively. So, we didn't really have a breathing room episode last week. That's usually how it works. You gotta have a chill, simple episode. People argue, is it filler, is it this or that? And we got a banger episode last week that was funny, unexpected, and just did a great job. We get thrown into the thick of it right away, and the theme of this episode is racism. And anytime you have elves in general, there's going to be the theme of racism, because elves, well, not every single time, but pretty much anytime you have elves, they're usually the high-strung species of the group. You can, listen, dwarves are very blunt and can be very dickish, but I'd hang out with a dwarf. I wouldn't really want to hang out with an elf. Like, they are very like, we're superior, this, that, and the third. And I don't blame the boy for, having it ingrained in him saying, you can't touch me, I have to choose, like, who's allowed to, this, that, and the third. It is what it is. But, definitely a dick because of how the race is, right? And the idea that, we've already dealt with a decent amount of that already. I mean, we can look at the previous arc with Julius and everything. I mean, he came into a bar or a tavern and basically was talking mad shit about dwarves being pathetic under him, all this type of stuff. So the hierarchy of, it's basically Will at the very bottom, dwarves slightly above, and, you go up to elves, but then again, of course, our boy, he's also not very, well, thinking high of himself, which we only got a little bit of a glimpse, and, the ending scene at the end of the episode with how he admits to himself, like, he's also, like, been treated poorly. So it's, they can maybe bond in Hell's Satan's pit down here as they both realize that they were pushed away from society in different ways. But, yeah, elves are an interesting beast. They have a great character design, they usually have amazing lore, they have really cool societies, but it's always just so... we hate everyone else, we think we're better than everyone else, and it's always ruffled my feathers. It's not always like that, but 9 out of 10 times it is. So the idea that, the person who Will ends up getting separated with when everything hits the fan, because the whole thing was that we were going to go down to floor 10, kill this Cerberus-looking beast, we come in and that thing's already dead and something else decides to jump us, and we get thrown into a Baldur's Gate 3 level. Like, it just escalated very quickly, and immediately reminded me of why I loved the previous DANMACHI season so much, because it escalated so much where you're like, okay, we got this, and then it just was like, okay, we're all gonna die. Okay, we're all gonna die. And they did such a good job, and this is what I really appreciate, and I think it really flexes the author pulling from his past experiences of already writing a series with magic and different types of action. Because I think for a lot of series, when they're trying to get across, okay, your MC can't use magic, he uses melee, they would just throw a lot of different random information at you, and you would just be like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But in this case, we see it over time. We've actually had a decent amount to see how strong Will is as a character. So when he's not actually being effective, and they're explaining it as he can't use this search spell, and how effective search is. Now, obviously, we know eventually there's going to come a point in the episode where his ears and his senses are going to, make up for it. But the idea of showing us up to this point how talented Will is, he is the one who usually reacts before anyone else with magic. And he felt like he wasn't even an effective pack mule doing the first bit of this little dungeon area. And by the end of the episode, it's the complete opposite. When search is no longer working because certain creatures might not be able to be picked up on it, he starts hearing things, he starts slicing and dicing, and by the end of the episode, he's taking out 3 creatures on one. It doesn't make, this elven guy this bad person or weak person. We saw him before that being very effective. He was wounded, and obviously certain spells just weren't working. But the idea of getting across that this is why Will has such a hand stack against him, because he's not able to use spells like that, but at the same time, we can also see how simply having to rely on that spell isn't also the greatest thing either. So it's just a very good way of getting across power scaling, because that's really what it boils down to. What Will can and can't do and is limited by this world, but also the other characters, and by establishing at the start why, the first 10 floors, if it really was just the first 10 floors, no one jumping, no one slicing and dicing, Will really would have been left behind. Maybe he could have got, the big 110 credit kill, but besides that, he just wasn't fit for that. But you throw him into uncharted territory where the gloves come off, yeah, he's right at home. And as he says, he's not really proud to admit this, and he's more ashamed than anything. But yeah, he's gotten lost a fair amount, just never quite this deep for sure. Because as they say, like this is for the highest level mages, if that, because of how damn deadly it is. But just a great episode, wonderfully produced. We had way more characters than we're used to on screen. We got a glimpse of all of them doing different attacks, very well produced. And, slight amount of comedy here and there, like Will getting the probably arrows shot into his heart, as this girl's like, yeah, he's probably strong and he probably will be effective later. Probably. And he felt his world crack and shatter in all that moments. It's just such a good episode. I thought we have 2 episodes. Like, I thought this episode next week, and then we'd be done whatever we were doing. Now I feel like it's going to the end of the season, because this shit's absolutely wild, and it doesn't look like anyone else is having a fun time now that everything else is running amok and going up to other floors. Fantastic, though. Let me know what you thought of this week's episode down below. How are you feeling if you've liked both DANMACHI and Wistoria? How are you feeling? Do you prefer this one for where DANMACHI was at in its run, or, do you think they're just a little too different to compare? Let me know down below. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell, and like I mentioned, we have full live reactions over on Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. Alright, so today we got original name here. Danny OZ, Big Trek, Martin Poshams, Brian Gonzalez, Cody Tiffany, Artson, Gled, Tiara is Grace, and Tarno Plays. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and you all have a good one.